Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Joining me now is former Minneapolis City Council member Don Samuels. Don, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's great to be with you, Brittany, and with your audience.
I'm excited to talk with you about your run. You are running again for Congress. You're running to unseat Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. But before we get into that, let's start at the very beginning. What propelled you to jump into politics?
Well, when I came from Jamaica in 1970, I was inspired by the civil rights movement, and so right after graduating, I joined the first Black Baptist church I could find, so I could be part of that movement. And when I was in college, I made a commitment I would always live in a low-income community, no matter how high I rose in the ranks. And so I've done that. My wife joined me in that after we got married 27 years ago. And because of that, we got involved in community where the needs were greatest. And my neighbors asked me to run for office after we had successfully worked together to deal with the drug dealing and the blight in our neighborhood. And they said, hey, we need somebody to represent us. We don't feel represented. And so that's how I ended up going into the city council, and then even running for mayor, and then won the school board, and a total of 3 terms in the city council and 1 on the school board.
And then let's fast forward to last year. You actually ran for this seat in the 2022 Democratic primary, but you lost by a very slim majority. What did you learn from that experience?
Well, I learned that I needed to start earlier. We only ran for 4.5 months because I got a late start. I thought somebody should step up, some current politician, and nobody did. So at the last minute, we stepped in, and so it was a very short term. So we're going longer this time. We're getting the support of people who stood in the sidelines because they thought I was crazy and couldn't win. And it was a hopeless cause. And so they're coming forward now and saying, wow, with a little more help, we can get you over the edge. And so, that's pretty much it. And I have the same team in place, so I'm inspired with the confidence of knowing that, I have the group that took us so close. And with a couple more weeks, we could have won. So we have that time in place.
Based on the numbers alone, this doesn't really seem like a hopeless cause, as some of your detractors may have said. You only lost by 2,500 votes about. So aside from starting earlier, have you changed strategies at all going forward?
Not much. We're going to pretty much stay the course. I started out at 28% name recognition in May, and the primary was in August. At the same time in May, Ilhan had 98% name recognition. And so she had nowhere to go. She was, the awareness of her was deep, and she was an incumbent. 98% of incumbents get reelected. So for me to come that close, it means that we had the right strategy, we had the right team in place, which we still do. And we just need to work harder and do the same things well.
Like you said, she does have a 98% name recognition. She is a nationally known figure in Congress. So where exactly do your policies differ?
Yes, she's a well-known figure, but she's as well known for divisiveness as just for anything else, more than anything else. And controversial statements, controversial positions, contrarian positions. And so I'm going to have a much more collaborative approach than she does. I have a history of collaboration. I live in the most challenged ward in the city, lowest income, but I get endorsed by the business community. I live in a racially mixed community, probably the most racially mixed in the city. And so I know what it means to bring people together across difference. In fact, my first ward configuration had literally half of the ward was white and half black, divided by the river. So, so it was even presumed that I couldn't win then, because the other side of the river always produced the winner. And so I know how to bring people together. People were attracted to my message of unity and mutuality, and that is diametrically opposed to my opponent, who tends to pick a side, get her team, and go after the other side.
Before we talk about that more specifically, as you know, as many of our viewers know, Ilhan Omar is a member of the Squad, which is made up of a few far-left progressive Democrats. Would you consider yourself more moderate?
I consider myself to be a true Democrat, right? A moderate Democrat, but I'm progressive on the issues, all the Democratic issues around gender equality, around a woman's right to choose, around universal health care and climate responsibility, all of those things. I just have a pragmatic approach. I believe that certain things that are hopeless and seem to be integrated into our system, like academic inequities and violence inequities, and economic inequities, can be solved, and that is as progressive as you can get. And so, in addition to that, I am also a collaborative person where she is not, and so I offer a lot of differences for the public.
I want to talk about what policies you're running for this campaign, but first, Ilhan Omar has repeatedly made calls for a ceasefire in Gaza. Are those calls you would echo?
What I would say is that Hamas is a terrorist organization that on a peaceful day rains down terror on Israel in bombing of public spaces by missile and by suicide bombs. This is a terrorist organization, and it abides by no rules. And so I believe that we should have humanitarian pauses for the delivery of humanitarian aid to the people of Palestine. I don't believe Israel is fighting a war against Palestine, it's fighting a war against Hamas. And so the people of Palestine need a break. They need to be more safe and more protected. But Hamas knows no peace. There was a peace. Peace was in place. There was essentially a ceasefire when the attack happened on the Israeli camp.
So you're saying no ceasefire, but more humanitarian pauses. What would that look like? Let's say you were in Congress right now. What would you specifically be calling President Biden to do?
Well, I think President Biden is actually on the right track, that he's insisting that Israel be more targeted in its approach, and that while that is difficult and even seemingly impossible, it must achieve that, and that it must open up opportunities for aid to reach the people of Israel, of Palestine, and that we can't afford to lose our values while pursuing our just goals.
Sir, I want to, before we get off the topic of your challenger, Democratic Representative Ilhan Omar, I just want to talk about some comments that you made on a podcast recently and get your response from them. You were talking on a podcast about lawmakers who walk the walk and don't just talk the talk. And I want to read a chunk of these comments and then get your response. You said this, quote, "And so to see government not be responsive like that to the people who pay them, it is offensive to me. And to not be responsive and available to those people, to meet with them and find out what their concerns are and answer their tough questions, to not get back to people on the phone. Who do you think you are? And who do you think you're working for? You're not cute enough. You don't dress well enough. Nothing about you is attractive enough to overcome that deficit." You've received criticism that these remarks are sexist in nature to Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. What's your response to that?
I was making a general statement about the performance of government. You see, I quote, use the word government, and and the kind of celebrity approach to leadership versus performance approach. And this was about constituent service and about being open to the public and having meetings, town halls, to let them know what you're thinking and to hear from them. These were the issues that were being addressed, and it was the absence of this issue that led me to a very strong condemnation of celebrity leadership. And I did not refer specifically to Congresswoman Omar in that statement.
Sure, I read the larger chunk so people could get the full context of what you were saying. And the first half does seem pretty general, but then when you say you're not cute enough, you don't dress well enough, nothing about you is attractive enough, who is that you?
That was the government you. That's if you see where I refer to government responsibility. And then I'm speaking directly to anybody who is going to presume leadership of any government entity or any community. That you got to get your act together if you're going to do that.
So the you is a collective you and not directed
Absolutely.
Specifically to Congresswoman Ilhan Omar?
Absolutely. That's the you I would look in the mirror and say.
Sure, she did respond. She took it as you were saying the you was her. She compared your comments to Trump. What would you say to her?
I think Congresswoman Omar resembles President Trump much more than I do. They are both divisive. They both pick a side and consider part of the American people to be their enemy. They thrive on divisiveness and victimhood, and they consider publicity over performance.
I do now want to talk about the race. You're talking to constituents in District 5. What are the issues that matter to them?
Oh, District 5, first of all, people want to be heard. They want to feel represented. That's why I came so close. They want to know that their servants, public servants, care about the primary issues, like the violence that's happening. Instead of stoking the fires of dissent with a defund the police, have a plan. Have support for the mayor that represents the city rather than attacking him and suggesting that anybody but him be elected when you have to work with him and other mayors in the future. So public safety, making sure you address what the primary concerns of the people are, affordable housing and homelessness. That's a big issue for us. And then, of course, our education disparities. People want to hear their leaders address those things and not being known for simply opposing the local mayor, opposing the national president, and opposing American opinions and interests in the international community.
When it comes to these issues like public safety, affordable housing, the economy, education, things like that, obviously, as you know, as we sit here right now, this could change in the election, but Republicans control the House, so you're going to have to work with Republicans on some issues. You're saying Congresswoman Ilhan Omar is divisive. How would you work with Republicans on these issues?
Well, first of all, I plan to meet with every member of Congress for a half hour, one per day, if I can get them to meet with me, so they get to know who I am, I get to know who they are. We know each other on a personal basis. That, in fact, by analysis, is the reason for all of the divisiveness. It's not philosophical differences, it's an absence of relationships, because people now live at home and commute to Washington versus what happened in the old days where they lived in Washington, commuted home, and their kids were on the same baseball teams, They met for weekend sleepovers, etc. And so parents knew each other across the aisle. And so when they met to argue in Congress, it wasn't personal. And now that those relationships have broken down, everything is personal. And the opposition is the enemy of democracy. And so I'm going to Washington. I'm going to get to know my opponents. I'm going to let them know me, so that when we argue, we're not arguing for individual interests, us against them. We're arguing for the best solution. And they know that that guy is not my enemy. He's just someone I like who I disagree with.
Let's talk about the top issue facing Americans, according to a recent ABC News Ipsos poll, and that's the economy. And the majority of voters in this poll think that Republicans are better equipped to fix the economy than Democrats. So A, how do you fix that? And B, after you meet with Republicans and talk with them, what's the solution here to fix this?
Well, let me say that in spite of the Republican rhetoric, the economy does actually better under Democrats than Republicans historically. It's not much, but it does better. But the Republicans have the rhetoric, and so the public is convinced that that the economy does better generally under Republicans than Democrats.
I do have to say, though, I've talked to many voters across the country, and no one is happy with their wallet right now. No one is happy shopping at the grocery store. No one's happy with their bank account. So how do you say, look, who cares if you blame Democrats, you blame Republicans? People want solutions. So what would that solution be?
Yeah, so we have to definitely get the economy under control. It is what's driving people is really the price of things, right? And we are in a difficult time. We have the war in Ukraine, and Americans are fighting that war with their wallets. Unfortunately, the money has to come from somewhere, and so it's a big factor. And there's a lot of turnover in our economy, and of course. We know that President Biden took a strong stand with the unions to improve wages in the auto industry, and then in the new industries that do not yet have unions. We need to strengthen the role of unions in those industries. It's a new day, and those industries, quite frankly, are getting away with murder in terms of fat cat owners and the workers not sharing in their wealth. And so those things need to change.
Don, looking forward, what's next for your campaign here?
Well, I have, by the way, the same campaign manager, the same vendor team. I have many of my same campaign workers. So we are now going to do a full-fledged campaign that includes the early aspect of campaigning, meaning the caucus, which we didn't participate in the last time. We came in just before the convention, and so we had to hurry up to try to find some delegates. Now we're going to participate in a soup to nuts campaign from caucus to primary, and we're going to do that intensely at every stage, in a hopefully a well-funded campaign.
Don Samuels, thank you so much for coming on with me, for our viewers to get to know you. I wish you luck. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to my interview after the primaries.